girls, grab your beers.
Hey everybody, this is Charlie from Anthrax, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kalin listens to this all the time.
Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now here's your host.
I am Monty Heath, so one Heath, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
Hey, what's up? It's John from Skillet, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle on Domain Cleveland Radio.
Fasten your seatbelts.
Incarceration, America's rock, metal, and tattoo festival with Slipknot. Falling in Reverse, Five Finger Death Punch, plus Marilyn Manson, 3 Days Grace, Beartooth, Knocked Loose, Lamb of God, Parkway Drive, I Prevail, In This Moment, and so many more. Report to the Ohio State Reformatory on July 18th through 20th, 2025 to face your sentencing. 3 days of rock, tattoos, and the return of the Haunted Blood Prison. Passes for Incarceration are on sale now at incarceration.com. Zombified.
What's going on, everybody? It's Bill Bailey with today's Boondoggle. And a real quick housekeeping note, if you're watching us on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey, please hit that follow and subscribe button. And if you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever podcast platform you utilize, please hit that follow and subscribe button so we can continue bringing you conversations like the one I'm bringing you today, trying to help our fellow military members become millionaires. I'm talking with David Pere. What's going on, man?
What's up, brother? How you doing?
Good, man. We're excited to finally get this going, man. We've been, like we were saying before we went on air, trying to nail this down, but both busy and, bouncing around the schedules after the holiday recovery and all that good stuff. But, hey, we're getting it done today, man. So excited about that.
Last week, I had 2 different podcasts I had to reschedule because I sounded prepubescent. I was like squeaking. My voice was just gone. So it's been a fun couple of weeks for me. But
yeah, that would have been weird with that look that you got.
It's funny because I ran a webinar last Tuesday, and like mid webinar, it was like Mickey Mouse squeak, and I was like, all right, guys, I'm clearly in puberty. Let's keep rolling. I don't know what you do at that point. I'm like, all right, well, you're here. The information's still good. Just don't mind my voice.
Awesome. Well, usually when I have people on for the first time, I like to get a quick background. So do you remember originally what you wanted to be when you grew up?
I think I always wanted to do something in the service world, whether that was law enforcement, firefighter, military. At one point, I was like, oh, cool. It'd be fun to be an engineer or an architect because I like Lego, but I didn't like school enough for either one of those things. And while I was decent at math, I'm glad I did not go either of those career fields. I probably would have washed out of architect school, and I have way too much of a personality to be an engineer. I would have probably gone nuts with my coworkers. And so, I joined the Marine Corps because I grew up in Podunk, Arkansas, and was like, man, I kind of want to leave. This is a good option. They'll show me the world. And they did.
Nice. And then when was it that you kind of felt that calling to serve your country?
Junior year. My junior year of high school, it was really the only semester I went to public school. I was homeschooled most of high school. And that semester I met all the different recruiters. I talked to all of them, and the Marine Corps just seemed the most appealing to me. And it just seemed like the best option because you can always go law enforcement or firefighter or whatever after 4 years in the military. It's not always so easy to go into the military later in life. So I figured, I'll probably regret it if I don't give this a shot. Let's see what happens.
Nice. And then, like you said, growing up in Podunk, Arkansas, you wanted to kind of get out of there. But what was the what was some of the oddest things or the culture shocks you experienced then leaving there to go into the Marine Corps?
I will say this and just preface with the fact that this is not a hatred thing, but black people was probably one of the biggest shocks from where I grew up. I and that sounds terrible, but while I had seen African American people, I don't know that I had known, and I mean maybe one person that I'd ever like gotten to know their name. I grew up in a town that we were in Little Rock, quote unquote, but we had a stop sign and a post office and about 900 people. And that was the extent of my like quote town. And it was, pretty typical, just white redneck town. So it was nothing bad. I didn't grow up in a racist environment. There was no ethnicity where I grew up. And so that was a culture shock going to boot camp. And I'm like, holy crap. Not only are there all kinds of ethnicities and diversities, but they're the majority. Like, this is not what I'm used to. So it was a very big, I would say it was just a lot of culture shocks because, you got people from all over the country and then all different diversities. And here I am, and all I've grown up knowing is rock, 80s rock and country music and other, very religious Bible belty people. And so it was a whole series of culture shocks for me at boot camp.
Gotcha. And then during your time in, after kind of like, getting used to that, and what would you say is probably like, one of the worst places you served at during your time in?
Well, I mean, I wasn't ever stationed there full time, but 29 Palms back when I went through Camp Wilson for, what did they, I don't even remember what they used to call it for the training that you had to do before you went to Afghanistan at 29 Palms. But I mean, at the time, Camp Wilson was like, no cell service, no alcohol, no fun, middle of nowhere, Kwanzaa huts, 29 Palms in the desert. And that sucked. And then as far as like actual duty stations, I would say where I live right now, Springfield, Missouri, but that was just because I was recruiting duty, which is really taxing. It wasn't necessarily the location, but my other duty stations were Japan, Hawaii, and San Diego. So comparatively, Missouri is not that fun, even though I really like Missouri. So
yeah. Well, then that one of those three is probably my next question. What was the best place that you served at?
I'm really glad I got to be stationed in Japan. I actually wish I'd gotten to go back at an older age where I could have, owned a car and gotten more involved in the culture. Because at 18, 19, you just don't have as many opportunities to go out. Plus I was on pre-deployment training and stuff. So as far as cultures that I actually got to explore, I would say Hawaii, but I would really love to have gone back to Japan for a longer period of time. And I loved the culture in Japan.
Nice. And then what would you say is one of your like pet peeves with civilians since transitioning out of the military?
Honestly, I think I've kind of created a weird bubble for myself where I still interact a large majority of the time with service members and vets. And even my like close circle of people who aren't service members or vets have all kind of made it through the vetting of the fact that I'm uniquely myself and never had to censor myself to be around non-service members because I built my own community. So I've done a pretty good job not having to worry so much about the culture. I guess I would just say like the whole PC and whining about everything, like but lucky for me, like the people who are, very like politically correct and whiny about, being a victim and they just want to play kind of the like, oh, woe is me game. I don't have to interact with them. So I just don't. So while it's kind of a pet peeve, it's more of a just really quick, like, okay, you're not going to be in my circle. Goodbye.
Nice. Yeah, that's good. That's I wish I could set that up a little bit more better for myself, but I learned to just let people be people sometimes. Even if I don't agree with it. One thing that drives me nuts, especially on social media, is like, I still have that ability. If I see something I don't like, I can just scroll past it.
Yes.
Seems like if I say something that I'm feeling, man, it's like, the bees are coming stinging, it's just like,
yeah, okay. I deleted the Instagram post last week because I I was trying to correct. It was right at the front of this whole Elon Musk. Everybody hates him now because they just, I don't know, they got told to thing. And so I was correcting a military.com article where they were like, oh my God, Elon and his team has been given unrestricted access to all these records and they're screwing everyone and they're messing everything up. And I was like, it's read only access. They're not tampering with anything, you know, and the hate I got on that video, I was like, I just don't want to deal with this. Like, this wasn't even a political post. This was just correcting like the understanding of how a unbiased audit works is you require read-only access. You keep people out of the building so they don't tamper with things while you're doing the audit. That's like standard, normal protocol stuff. And the world is, you know, melting down over it. But I ended up deleting the post because I was just like, oh my gosh, like there's no rationalizing. And these people just pure hatred. And I'm a very neutral, like I don't talk politics online. Most people wouldn't know how I voted. They'd probably assume, but I'm pretty damn neutral. And there's a whole lot of policies on both sides that I don't agree with or that I do agree with that would surprise people. And yet, boy, you've mentioned anything about either political side right now, and it is freaking game on, war zone. There's no neutrality, and it's kind of sad. I'm like, dude, I'm in the middle here. Leave me alone.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I had an interview yesterday with a musician, and you know, we were mostly just talking about the, you know, his band and their career and stuff, but it went into politics. I didn't lead it there. I let him have his rant, have his little bit of soapbox, and then I didn't agree with it, but it was just like I realized that wasn't the debate I was there for. I was there to interview him about, so I redirected it and put it back on track, and he'll be on there, and I'll let the fans decide what they like, you know, when they hear it, you know. I try not to censor people. I give everybody. I'm like you. I try and be more in the middle, you know. It's like I think we served for everybody to have a voice at the table, you know, even if we don't agree with them or not, you know. And,
I know. I
still
joke,
try and live by that.
I joke, like, I think my shorthand joke when I talk to people, when people like bring up politics, I'm like, well, I like guns, weed, and less government. So whatever that fits me in.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Wait, that's a right wing, a left wing, and a libertarian policy. I'm like, yeah, exactly. Pretty neutral. Pretty easygoing guy.
Yeah,
like, leave me alone.
All right, we definitely got that in common then. And then, what is something that you feel you'll always carry with you from your time of service?
A TBI. Man, you know, all the normal aches and pains, but I would say, I mean, really just, man, there's a lot of good answers there, but I guess just like the discipline or the knowledge, I guess the best word would be consistency. I think one of the things I got that was probably the most beneficial for me leaving service was just the ability to keep working on the same thing, even if it's not working at first. Gotcha.
And then what was one of the funniest stories you feel you can share from your time of service?
Oh man, we got all kinds of funny stories for sure, but let's see, ones that won't incriminate me or get people to question things. I joke, but probably one of my favorites, the one that pops in my head when you ask that question, is one night when we were on patrol. So we were in Marja, which was in Helmand Province, Afghanistan in 2010, and we were doing we were a security element. We were doing nocturnal security stuff. So we're sitting in our MRAP, you know, on thermals and nods, just keeping post, right? Nothing exciting. And in the back of the MRAPs, we figured out like there's two air conditioners. There's one up front, and then there's a separate set in the back, and you could pull the vents out of the back ones and like shove Gatorades or Dr. Peppers or whatever in there, so the drink itself would get cold, which is, you know, a really nice luxury when you're in the desert. Even at night in the summer, the desert's, you know, it's quote chillier, but it's not exactly, you're not getting refrigerated beverages in the middle of nowhere when you're living out of a tent, right? And so that was like our luxury, was we could have like 2 or 3 soda or drinks in there, and we had a truck with 4 people, and we didn't get drops of, you know, it was basically care package stuff. There was a PX truck that would come by like once a month or whatever, and it was always ravaged by the time it got to us. So long short, my vehicle commander, Josh, was obsessed with Dr. Pepper and had not had Dr. Pepper in like months. And he got a care package and he got like a little 6-pack, and he took the one Dr. Pepper and he put it in the back of the MRAP, and it was cooling off, and he was so excited about it. And then he fell asleep, and the A gunner, who had been asleep, was awake and had no idea that the Dr. Pepper was this super important thing to our vehicle commander. And he's fallen asleep on post. So he's like, oh, there's some caffeine in that. Wasn't really falling asleep, but he's tired. So he drinks the Dr. Pepper. And my vehicle commander lost his shit. And he just, after losing his shit, he just let it slide. And then later that night, my vehicle commander, so in the MRAP, right, there's fuel tanks on either side of the driver's door, passenger door. And so the A gunner had hopped out of the truck and was standing on the fuel tank right outside the vehicle commander's door, taking a piss off the truck into the canal. And Josh looked at me and was like, I can't remember the exact word. I've got it written down, but I think he basically said, I'll teach him to fuck with my Dr. Pepper. And he just opens the door and slams the like 400-pound armored door into our A gunner and launches him into a canal in full kit, dick out, midstream piss. It was probably the funniest thing I'd seen in a minute. Is the A gunner just flying through the air, screaming, and then there was probably not the safest or smartest thing to do, hindsight, but also we're on thermals, we're watching the whole area, there's nothing happening, and he got to sit sopping wet in the back of the truck, pouting the whole rest of the night, and he never drank the VC's Dr. Pepper again. That was, to me, that was very funny.
Hey, wonder if he was able to get a service connection out of that, though.
I'm sure he's filed now. He's like, oh, my back. Oh, yeah, it was totally from an IED, not from drinking my guy's Dr. Pepper and getting thrown out of the truck. But anyway.
And then what is one of your greatest hopes for the country that you've been willing to give your life for?
I mean, right now, I would just love for people to read books like Manufacturing Consent or that's probably the best one right now, but nobody's going to read it because it's a miserably complex and dry read. But just understanding how the media can control a narrative, and understanding that if you turn off the news, you turn off the media, and you stop paying attention to one-sided news sources on either side of the aisle, life in the world is pretty damn good. And so I would just tell people, hey, try to look at both sides of the argument and understand that division helps no one. Anger helps no one. And if you turn off all the news sources, you'll find that your greater your fellow man is usually a pretty decent person at heart. And if you don't believe any of that, I would say make it a point to travel this year, because the more you travel, especially if you go to second, third world countries, the more you appreciate what you have in America. And I think the message I would give everyone is essentially that. Just stop hating each other, and where you live is the best place you could possibly live. We are not perfect, but we are a hell of a lot better than you've been led to believe on either side of the aisle.
Yeah, agreed, man. And it's like the only ones benefiting from the division and hate are the ones orchestrating it, the powers that be. And they don't want to see all of us. I mean, that was the one thing I was in agreement with the guest I had on yesterday. It's like they don't want to see people like me and him come together, nope. and unite, And it's like true, yeah. They don't want us all talking and sharing and, like you said, traveling and getting to know other things outside of our bubble.
Yeah, they want polarizing for whatever reason.
And then, what do you feel we can do to break the stigma of mental health and PTSD?
Honestly, I think, I don't want to say we talk about it less, because I think that's kind of there's like a double-edged sword, where I think that awareness just makes more people think they have a problem than they may. It's like the 22 a day thing. I'm personally not a huge fan, because I'm like, the more it's like, the more you publicize it, the more that a vet who's struggling thinks of it as a viable out, because they're like, oh, well, these 7 people did it. Like, that's fine. It's like normalized. And I don't think that's helping anything. I really think that I mean, my answer to all of that is like, find another vet, go outside and get some sunshine and walk. And if you just go out in nature and walk and have a normal conversation with someone who's also struggling, or even who's not struggling and had struggled, or just had a similar experience, and just the key here is go out in the sun, move your freaking legs, and realize that like life's worth living. I don't think there needs to be a stigma. I mean, we've all got shit wrong with us, especially if you served in an actual combat zone, right? Like I got out of the Marine Corps, my testosterone dropped to 170, which is like 90-year-old man status, because my brain no longer sends the signal to produce the chemicals from, being blown up in an IED in a truck or whatever. And for whatever reason, people swallow their pride and don't talk about that stuff, but it's very common. And so like, just talk about it, just go out in nature and enjoy the sun, and life will be a whole lot better for you.
Yeah, I agree, man. And then, I want to talk about, transitioning out of the military and getting into what you're doing now. Talk a little bit about that. Share a little bit about what you do now and how that journey was getting out and transitioning out into this world.
Yeah, we run a community called From Military to Millionaire. Help service members and vets learn how to use their VA loan and achieve financial freedom. It is primarily ended up being kind of a real estate investing platform, which is funny because I try not to make it that way. I try to be like all things finance, investing. I believe in the whole picture. And I've got index funds and IRAs set up for my kids and me and all the things. But yeah, we try to help vets understand just basic financial literacy and understand how to use their VA loan to maximize their benefits. And, I bought a bunch of real estate that last 5.5 years I was active duty, and I was lucky enough that kind of funded my ability to not have to work a normal W-2 again. And then this community that it was just a hobby blog. I was just talking online about things I was learning, blew up. And one day I was like, oh shit, this is a business model. I should probably take this seriously. And, so that's been great. Transition, ironically, was I assumed because I'd had, financial freedom, I had a little bit of money, I could kind of do my own thing, that transitioning out of the military would be easy, especially because I had like a military community that I'd built. And it was a lot harder than I thought, just because, it's hard to really work through like your identity being tied to the military. Now you have to figure out who you are outside of the military, and your sense of purpose being tied to the military. Now you have to tie that to something else. Now, luckily I'd kind of done that, but going through that identity crisis, and then especially for me, like I moved back to somewhere where there weren't a lot of Marines, there wasn't a big military like active duty population, and so while there are veterans, it's not the same as living by like Camp Pendleton, where I still get to hang out with friends that I served with. And so, all of that was a little bit of just a shock. And so I would just tell people when they're getting through that, when they're getting ready to transition, like have more cash saved up than you think you need, because there's always going to be something. And spend time figuring out who you are, not who you are like Dave the Marine, but who you are without the military, who you as Dave are as a person deep down, what hobbies, what passions, what drives you, whatever. And then just, again, going outside and hanging out with vets is good for the soul.
Yeah. Now, you're saying a lot that I was connecting with, because like when I first got out, I retired back in, 2012, but for the long, I'm here, I still wear some of the shirts, it's still like that grunt style vet, or whatever, and my whole, persona or whatever stayed, my whole purpose was I'm a veteran. That was it. And then I got sober, I'm 15 years sober now, and I started working with a sponsor and everything, and just like kind of working on myself and finding, that was one of the things he would stress on me. He's like, who are you outside of your time in service? Find your purpose, find, what you weren't just here to be a vet, Navy vet, you weren't just here to be, so that was part of my journey. I started doing this podcast as part of my like healing and therapy for myself as well, having these conversations with other veterans and people of all walks of life, and, but like, okay, saying that though, too, obviously, when I look back at my time in service, I was that for somebody that was able to get 20 years in the military. I wasn't very disciplined. I was more the, the McHale's Navy, go out and, we'll get the work done, but we're going to party hard and drink and, all kinds of ridiculousness. So I didn't take advantage of a lot of opportunities. Like you were saying before you got out, I found out about things after I got out. I was so pissed. Like I did a lot of times in reserves, and we would do ATs and travel, and guys are collecting bonuses and points on travel perks and all this shit. I didn't know anything about signing up for any of that stuff. Nobody taught me that. I lost out on so much. I was so pissed. So let's say you're working with a guy like myself. I'm going to be 52 years old. I'm surviving. I'm doing all right on my VA, money and everything like that. But I didn't, I just started. I'm late to the game with investing. I'm late to the game with, I haven't, the place I'm living at now, I didn't even use my VA loan for this. I still got a VA loan out there I could use or whatever. What would be a good plan for somebody like myself that's kind of just finding out about this stuff late in the game? Or is it too late? Or, is there things out there that somebody like me could do to start kind of preparing to set his family up for something at least?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't say it's too late. I would just say you're probably not going to want to use the strategies I talk to younger service members about. Cause when I talk to younger service members, I'm like, dude, use your VA loan, buy a fourplex, live in one unit, rent the other 3 out, live for free. Now you can save all the money you would have been paying on your mortgage to invest in other stuff. Like that's my fastest, pull the cord to change the trajectory of your financial future. But in your situation, it'd probably be, it would depend on whether you're willing to move into another house, in which case you could use the VA loan. Great. But you'd probably be more in it would really depend on, we'd have to dig more into finances. I don't know, probably a longer call, but whether you're in the I have more time than I have money group, or the I have more money than I have time group, where if you're in that group, then you can just find passive investments with, other people who are operating deals, and you can be the lender and get a return on your money backed by the real estate, which is a great move, whether that's, investing in syndication. Like I'm doing a webinar tomorrow where we're talking about a ground up commercial development for accredited investors, and they will have access to basically a return on their money over, a 3 to 5 year window without having to do any work, which is great if you've got cash laying around and not a lot of time. But if you want, if you're the other side of the spectrum, which is more of you're going to have to earn the sweat equity, right? The more time on your hands, so to speak, than you have, a ton of cash, which is where most of us start off. Then, you're going to want to learn either how to operate deals or maybe get into like a house flip or two, or it's really kind of going to just depend on your strategy, but you're going to have to be more actively involved in the acquisition and property management and renovations and all of that to get things off the ground until you do have the capital laying around to invest elsewhere. The easy button though is, having a decent life insurance policy that will transfer to people once you pass, right? Because that's a easy way to set people up a little bit. IRAs or index funds are a good place to just stash capital if you don't want to be, hands-on investing in real estate. It really kind of depends on like your long-term goals, your time, your capital. Like there's like a puzzle for all this stuff for sure. But I would say one of the best strategies, if you have a little bit of money laying around for somebody who's got time, is the BRRRR, which is it's an acronym, BRRRR, which is you buy a house, you renovate it. So you buy a house that needs a lot of fixing up, you renovate it. Once it's renovated, you put a tenant in it. And then some banks have a period, you have to wait like 6 months. And once you pass that, you can do a refinance, and you buy the house cash, or you have a lender who pays, like a private lender who pays cash. You renovate the house. And then after that 6 months or whatever, you refinance and you put long-term fixed rate debt on it. You pull all the money back out, and then you go do it again. And so you're able to basically you're basically flipping a house, except when you flip a house and you sell it, you no longer have a rental and you pay a ton of capital gain, or, you taxes on it, short-term capital gains taxes on it. When you do this strategy, you get to hold it as a rental, and the money you pull back via the refinance isn't taxed because it's a refinance, which is an untaxable transaction. And so you can defer the taxes to way down the road and have these rentals that are building equity, and you can just kind of rinse and repeat with the same, 50 to 100 grand or whatever, either from yourself or from another investor. And so that's a pretty good way to get your feet off, get yourself off the ground.
Nice. And then so like you said, you mostly kind of like work with younger veterans, kind of teach them a strategy as they're, as they're still active or transitioning out, or who do you mostly work with?
Yeah, I mean, I have a ton of free content, whether that's podcast, YouTube. We've got 1,300 videos on YouTube, 250 podcast episodes out. My blog, I give away my book away for free. And all of that is geared towards just helping younger service members kind of avoid the mistakes that we all made, right? Whether that's the mistake of just not doing anything or the mistake of putting your money in spots that shouldn't be or whatever. And just basic foundational finances. And then I try to help them use their VA loan to live for free, essentially, so they can reinvest the money they were spending. That's my favorite strategy. And then my only, paid resource is this. It's called the War Room, which is a mastermind group that we run with 500 different service members and vets in it. And, I try to keep that for more like people who are either already have a decent handful of properties or just like, I have cash, like, I'll do whatever, show me the way. And so that's not pitched to younger service members or whatever. That's kind of a more seasoned thing where we want a higher level person in that group who wants to achieve financial freedom quickly. So I usually just point people towards the free resources because I'm like, this will help. Like, there's a whole handful of things that I did wrong that you could be way further ahead of me if you just don't make those mistakes. And here's some easy ways to avoid that. Right. So.
Yeah, I'll just say that my time in active duty investing in the red light district was not a good option.
Guilty.
I lost a lot. But yeah, I'm playing, like I said, I'm playing catch up. I'm learning about, I've been, along my sobriety journey, which was a huge help to be able to, stop investing in things that I was using to kill myself with, basically. And now as I'm coming along, focusing and reading into things that I can try and prepare a little bit of something, at least pass down to my kids, I've gotten, into the, stocks. I have a financial guy that's helped me out with that. I've been doing very well with the investments. Didn't really, I have some Navy friends that got into real estate that I've been thinking about talking to, maybe teaming up and using some of these strategies with. But like your journey has been, share a little bit more about like how you got into this, I guess, and what you've, been able to put together, like you said, some free stuff to pass along.
Yeah, someone handed me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad in 2015, and that was kind of the catalyst for my journey. I realized that if I bought a house that paid me to own it, and then I continued doing that a few times, eventually I'd have money coming in on assets that were going up in value, and that would just be a double win, for me as far as my portfolio. And so that was kind of where I started. I really, in 2018, I launched a blog just because I wanted to learn how to write. And I was just documenting what I was learning and putting out free content. And then people would ask questions and I would go and, research the answer to their questions and post content about that. And so we just kind of grew that way for a long time. And at this point, I've got a free personal finance course for service members and vets. I give my book away. You can buy it on Amazon, but I give the PDF away for free to people. We've got the YouTube channel and podcast and all that. And it's just, anything you want to know. If you're questions about your thrift savings plan, I've got answers in there. Questions about your VA loan, I've got answers in there. And I can introduce you to agents and lenders that actually know how to use it. Just a ton of free resources that we've built out to try to help the average service member and vet make just better basic decisions, right? And it's funny because I joke all the time about like the Charger, the Challenger, the Mustang at 30% interest and those stereotypes. And then I just bought a 25 Corvette Z06 last month. So I'm like, well, I guess at this point I probably can't joke too much, except that I also put a significant amount of money down and it's well within my means. But, there's just some good basic financial habits, right? Like people look at that and they're like, oh, this guy drives this and he's telling us to live frugal. I'm like, well, yeah, but I sold all my toys when I got into real estate, rolled them into properties, rolled those properties into other properties, rolled those properties into hotels and apartments, rolled those into more properties. And then eventually when I went to buy the car, I put like 25% down and did a 66-month loan at, I think it's at 9.6% interest. So it's not nearly as bad as it could be. And also that monthly payment is like 5% of my monthly income. So, who cares? But in fact, I think I set the auto payments up to be $700 a month more than what they're asking me to, just so it'd be a round number. So I was like, it'll pay it off a little faster. But I mean, it really is just managing your expenses, ensuring that you're not spending more than what's coming in and you're investing that elsewhere, whether that's index funds or real estate or whatever. It's just making sure you're not, ooh, I have money, let me go buy a handgun, when you could go, ooh, I have money, let me buy another $1,000 worth of an index fund.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've been the handgun guy too, so
I talked myself out of one last night.
But what do you like? One thing that I've been looking into myself, once again, late to the game on things, but I guess better late than never, is trusts and LLCs and stuff. Do you guys have any kind of advice or any part of your what you guys do that gives kind of guidance on those types of things? Or
yeah, I have a partner that does free consults for anyone in my community that's interested there, who does all my LLCs, and they did my last trust, and they've been great for me. But I have an article on my website too. Like if you go to the website, you just type in, do I need a trust, or do I need an LLC? Because the reality is most people, you don't necessarily need an LLC when you're starting out. Like people hear the whole LLC asset protection thing and they get spooked, which is understandable, but it's going to depend on your assets. So the guy trying to sell you an LLC will say every house you own should be in an LLC, you'll get sued and you'll lose everything and this, that, and the other. The reality is if you bought a house with a VA loan, you have zero equity when you first close, right? Because it's, 0% down. And so you have very minimal equity. Nobody suing anyone is going to be like, wow, we could get $10,000 out of this house if we forced him to sell it. Let's force him to no. They only really care to come after your assets if there's a significant amount of equity in those if you get sued. And so when you buy a house with a VA loan, you don't necessarily need an LLC. It becomes when you have, like for me, I do roughly $500,000 worth of equity in every LLC. So I'll buy, 4, 5, 6 houses in where I live in one LLC, then get another LLC, buy 4, 5, 6 houses. And I just kind of try to split it out that way. And then, I do have a trust and it kind of outlines everything, but basically just trying to streamline that whole process to make it simple for if something happens. But the LLCs are great. I would say the biggest benefit when you're first starting out with an LLC is it gives you an easy way to write off everything you're spending. So that saves you some money, because then you can be like, well, hey, I paid Dave this amount for mentorship. Well, that's a write-off because it's a business expense, because it's mentorship and it's personal development. So now that I have an LLC, I can go write off 30%. Y'all get 30% of that back in taxes. Those things I think add up more than the asset protection side of things when you're first starting out. So kind of a roundabout way to say it depends, but yeah, I've got someone I can introduce you off the side that they'll do a free consult with you if you want and talk through it. Nice.
And then like for like you said, going back to like people that are curious about getting into stuff like this, I mean, I guess use me as an example again. Older veterans that didn't know about these benefits, that want to come in and just set up maybe some passive income or other, things on the side that where it doesn't, I mean, they can't physically keep going out and doing a lot of the work that the younger veterans can do with like flipping a house or stuff like that.
Agreed.
Are there other avenues that your course can show some of these older veterans how to, make some money where it's, they're able to, it's making money on it's doing the work for itself, basically.
Yeah, a lot of the networking within the community is people who are lending money, and they get they'll get a return for either being a private lender on a deal, and it'll be a fixed return, or an equity stake in a deal on like a syndication, and they'll get a return. So if you have some cash, there's a ton of very passive ways that you can kind of invest that and earn a return. I hate like the whole passive income hype these days because everyone thinks it's a scam, but really if you have some money, it's very easy to lend it out or invest it in solid deals and get a return. The other side of that, honestly, is a book called The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins, and it just digs into index funds, and that is about the most hands-off passive way to invest, where you just say you get a Vanguard fund like VTSAX, which is a total stock market index, and you just dump cash into it, and you own a piece of every stock in the market, and you're just betting on the U.S. economy, essentially. And so that's a much more like hands-free, no real estate involved way to just stuff cash somewhere where it'll earn, a 7 to 8% return over time, inflation adjusted. And so that's a good option, but it really, and then the other side to that would be skill sets. I think a lot of people miss the fact that depending on what your skill sets are, you could probably leverage that for extra W-2 income or side income, 1099 income as a consulting gig or whatever. And then that's like the real way to increase your trajectory is either by cutting your living costs, right? Like I mentioned with the fourplex, or by getting more income in from an additional little side hustle or consulting or whatever, that you can then just save all of that to invest, right? Because the larger your savings gap is, the faster you'll achieve financial freedom.
Yes. One thing that you mentioned about, for the people that have kind of more developed, the benefits of like mastermind groups. I know a while back I was involved in one. I haven't been in a while, and I can kind of see the results of where I've fallen off in personal goals that I set myself up with, because it's almost like a form of accountability.
Yeah.
When you got to report into a mastermind group, it's not like people are hounding you or anything like that. But at the same time, when you got to go give an update at a mastermind group or whatever, it's like, oh shit, I didn't follow through on this stuff that I said I was going to follow through on. You want to share a little bit more about the benefits of masterminds?
Yeah, I'm a huge believer, and I was a huge believer before I ever started one. I had been in 3 different mastermind groups before starting my own, and there is just something to be said about learning from people who've already been where you were or where you are and already achieved what you want to achieve, and will help hold you accountable and steer you the right way. I tell people all the time, I'm like, yeah, all the free information is out there on the internet. Hell, I've got most of the free information. But if you don't know what question to ask, then the free information won't be any good, because it's not like this chronological, perfectly curated, like YouTube is not going to sit you down and go, hey, Dave, where are you struggling exactly right now in your business? Okay, cool. Well, in that case, in my experience, this should be the next video you watch to learn the thing you don't know you need to know. Whereas a group of people where you can bounce an idea off, they will very quickly tell you, oh, you're missing this, and this is what you need to look at. And that can save you an exorbitant amount of money. My first flip cost me $30,000. And had I just known what questions to ask about the contract with my contractor, or managing the contractor, or, whether or not you should buy a house where the renovation budget is larger than the purchase price, I probably would have, any one of those 3, let alone all 3 of those answers, would have saved me $30,000 in education. And by that, I mean $30,000 that I lost on a flip, which I chalked up as educational, because there's no other way to justify a loss like that to yourself other than like tuition. And so masterminds save you that by shortcutting you. I guess the perfect example of this is if you went back to the glory days of Arnold Schwarzenegger and his documentary Pumping Iron, and you could work out in that gym every day for 5 years, you could not help but get into incredible shape as a bodybuilder, because you are surrounded by bodybuilding giants. And if you were in that room with those people following their lifestyle, you would end up looking and acting the same way.
Mhm.
And so for whatever reason, people understand that when it comes to like fitness and some stuff, but they don't understand that when it comes to investing. They're like, no, I'll just do it all myself. I don't want to pay anyone. I don't want to learn anything. I don't want to be in a group. It's all a scam. I can learn it all for free. And then it's like, yeah, well, you can. No one's saying you can't learn it for free. We're just saying, would you rather teach yourself how to work out or hire a personal trainer and work out next to Arnold for a year? Which one do you think would be faster and better results? Like, you can absolutely do it on your own. You'll save some money doing that. But it's like, you're right. It's like the analogy of, there's a million ways you could skin that analogy, right? Like, yeah, you can buy a Honda Civic and it'll get you A to B. The Corvette will just do it much faster and you'll enjoy it a lot more. So what is your end goal?
Yeah, like I kind of share like an analogy, like for my daughters, learn from the mistakes I made. If I'm hanging out at the bar with alcoholics, if I'm hanging out at the bar with like 5 alcoholics, I'm alcoholic number 6.
Yep.
The people you surround yourself with make it more towards the goals you're trying to attain, and be willing to learn. Like, me being an addict in recovery and stuff, I know the accountability aspect that I need, and like you said, hanging out with people that are into fitness and training, is going to help me get fit and stay in better shape. Hanging out with people that with financial success that I'm trying to get towards will help me get there. So it's like I try and at least pass on, hey, don't be late in the game like your old man, and I got one, my 21-year-old's pretty, laser focused and already doing well in investments and stuff like that. So I'm excited about, what her future has to say, and I'll make sure that she checks out this episode as well. I know you have to, we have to, cut this off pretty soon though. Anything else that you wanted to pitch about your program?
No, I'm not much of a pitcher. I generally just throw the information out there, and when people are ready to take it to the next level, they'll find me. So I would leave this. I would say, if you go to thebestpodcastguest.com, there's a link to download my book for free and find all my social media. So if you want to contact, if you want to connect, that's the best way to do it. And again, that's thebestpodcastguest.com.
Nice. Well, I'll say you've been pretty good on mine. I don't know if you're the best yet, but no.
No. I definitely don't believe it, but it's a catchy ass URL that people remember.
Exactly. But real quick, I want to ask you a couple questions I normally ask my guests before we wrap up here. What class do you feel should be mandatory before graduating high school today?
Just basic finance. And honestly, okay, you know what? No, total rant, not even a rant. I think they should have a class that just teaches you how to learn. And in today's day and age, it's funny because my ex-wife is a counselor in high school and she's going to hate me when my kid gets older. I don't give a shit if my kid learns anything about anything, as long as he leaves high school knowing 2 things: how to work with people and how to find answers. Because in today's day and age, whether it's AI or your smartphone or whatever, as long as you know how to find the answer, you can do anything you freaking want. And if you know how to network and work with people and you know how to find answers, the sky's the freaking limit. I don't care about the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And then who are 3 people who've inspired you and you can credit for making you the person you are today?
I would say Robert Kiyosaki for one, because he wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Brandon Turner of Bigger Pockets. He was the original co-host of their podcast, and then he wrote a bunch of their books, and he's a good friend. Boy, there's a lot of other ones in there. Let's see. I'll stick to my buddy Matt Aitchison. He's my performance coach right now, and he's done a ton for me.
Nice. And then any message you have for our military brothers and sisters currently serving overseas?
Try not to blow all your money on hookers and booze. Don't do dumb shit. Come home safe, and just remember that life is always better with you around. And so, get outside, enjoy the sun, and hang out with vets.
Awesome. David, thank you so much, man, for your time. I'm glad we were able to have this conversation. I'll be in touch and keep in contact with you, and anything else, comes up with your programs, I'd always love to have you back on,
Absolutely, brother. Thanks for having me. This is a good time.
Yeah. And then one last favor before I let you go. You mind cutting a promo ID for the show? Just introduce yourself, and you're listening to today's Boondoggle podcast.
Absolutely not. Let me pull you back down to where I can see you. Oh, come on. There we go. I try to put my thing so I'm staring at you when I talk. So what is it you want me to say?
Just introduce yourself. I usually have my veterans introduce themselves at the last rank they held in the military, and you're listening to today's Boondoggle podcast, but feel free to pitch, military millionaire as well.
Absolutely. I'm Gunnery Sergeant David Pere, and you're listening to the Boondoggle podcast. Does that work? Something like that?
Yeah, that's good.
They'll learn about the rest. They don't need that. Like I said, I'm not much for pitching.
Awesome. Well, hey, man, thank you so much for being on once again, and it was great information. And I'll stay in touch with you, and if I network with a ton of vets, so maybe I'll connect you with some of my other real estate veteran friends and all that.
Absolutely, brother. I'd love to have a conversation. I appreciate everything. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye.